Welcome back, officers of the Republic. It's your Coruscant Underworld Police Chief, APGAINS, for another episode of APGAINS in Asia. It's just APGAINS, but I'm on a work trip, so my audio quality isn't as great. Information is still good. I promise you'll enjoy this one and the rest of the stuff for the next 2 weeks while I'm out of town, but the audio quality is not great. All right, so today we're talking about something that free-to-play players are oftentimes scared of, and for good reason, and for some bad reasons, and I think there's definitely been a huge shift in how free-to-play players should view this over the last year and a half, and we'll talk about why. To save some time and, essentially get rid of all of the ambiguity, we're going to talk specifically about marquee characters. And yes, I get it. Like, marquee characters, when they first come out, you got to wail on them. Obviously, don't do that. There is that secondary strategy of waiting a little bit and getting them from shipments, which you can do completely free to play. And something that I have, let me just grab this real quick, something I have been very much taking advantage of, and I think you should too. And I'll present that argument to why you should and why you shouldn't in this quick little couple-minute video. But it's something that players who don't spend money, free-to-play players, and even low spenders have kind of stayed away from, right? Because when you think of a marquee character, most people think of, an Arnold stream where he spends $300 to $500 getting a new character, and then you test it, and then you realize that it's a ton of money, and if you're not that one person in the world who's going to benefit from it, it's a sinkhole, right? Like, if you don't have the money to spend, don't spend it out. I always tell people is, if you can't physically hold the money in your hand and light it on fire, you should not be spending it on Galaxy of Heroes. Now, obviously, I'm not your dad. I am your mom, but I'm not your dad, so I can't tell you how to spend your money. So if it's something that you get enjoyment from, as long as it's not a problem, right? A lot of people sometimes occasionally have problems with spending in mobile games. Avoid that. But as long as you're good to go, whale to your heart's content. Obviously, shipments is a little bit better, but here's the thing. Shipments are still expensive, and a lot of people still view crystals like it's pre-money-based matchmaking, right? Like, pre-money-based matchmaking, I don't think I would have ever told you to spend crystals on marquee characters, right? Or characters that are not yet free-to-play farmable, like the Afro requirements, for instance. Some of them now are free-to-play farmable after a couple months, which is nice, but Sana, for instance, is not. But what's changed is with money-based matchmaking, there's less fun, but there's more crystals to make up for that less fun. Does it make up for that less fun? I don't think so, but you guys can decide. But what it does allow you to do is have much more access to marquee characters like the Afro requirements, like, characters like the new one that came out while I was on an airplane, Zori Bliss, I think it's called. It gives you much more access to these characters, which drastically changes up how we should be farming stuff, how we should be preparing our teams. You guys obviously know, like, the lily pad strategy that I've talked about all the time, which is essentially you can't have everything, but you need to make sure. This is the Zori Bliss. Has anyone ever done these last ones? Like 2 Omicrons for 10 shards or whatever. So cool. But yeah, I mean, the general strategy is you want to identify what of all of the things that are coming out is going to be super important and worth doing the shitty part of this game. If we're being perfectly honest, like, I have not been enjoying the farming aspect recently. Like, I'm farming Afra, Grand Inquisitor at the same time, right? Like, yes, I went like GL S tier ship, GL S tier ship, and that takes forever and is annoying, and it's fun to mix in those side teams, but occasionally you have to identify something that's so OP that it's worth struggling over, right? Like, not to get all, oh, life is all about working hard but in this game frequently there are things, and this is something that really pisses me off sometimes, because some people just don't listen, or they disagree and then turn out to be wrong. There are some things in this game that are worth way more than other things, right? Like, when Kenobi first came out, it was so clear that if it would take you a couple extra months to get Kenobi over a different GL, and so many other people were just like, oh, Relic 8, even though they had access to Relic 8, I'm not going to go for Kenobi. I'd rather go for something else. And that proved to be a terrible mistake. Same thing with the Executor. People were like, I'm going to get another GL instead of getting the Executor. That proved to be a huge mistake. Same thing with the Profundity. Same thing with the Interceptor. I mean, to this day, I still see people who should have fucking 9-star Interceptors who don't even have them unlocked, right? That's a D tier fleet to an A tier fleet for free with no investment whatsoever. I mean, now you have to play pickup, but you could have just had it if you had the GP. And these are players who did have the GP, right? Obviously, if you didn't have the 4 million GP, you can still have it, but it would be a lot harder. Sorry, I'm getting on a tangent, man. Roster review brain just turned on, and I'm just like 10,000 years of roster PTSD kind of coming out all at once. The point I'm trying to make is Afra, Grand Inquisitor, and Grand Inquisitor not because of the team. While the team is good, I'm talking about Grand Inquisitor for his ship, Afra for TB3 stuff, but also for GAC. Yet to be seen on Sori or stuff like that. Like obviously, there's going to be a lot of marquee characters that are going to come in that are going to kind of mix up teams. That tends to be what they like to do. They like to throw in random characters to mix up teams to kind of force you to relic characters higher that you wouldn't have otherwise relic to give some extra cash money and stuff like that. But getting back to the original point is basically there needs to be a shift in thinking for fellow people who aren't spending money on this game, that we gotta identify the marquee characters that aren't just good but are going to be really good, right? Like worth doing, like going back to that Kenobi, that Executor, that Profundity, right? That Interceptor. Things that are going to suck and take a little bit longer, but are going to be worth it in the end, right? Because how many thousands of people have come on stream over the last couple of years and had the opportunity to go for, a good strategy and instead did something that was a little bit easier, but then like the annoying part about this game, and I feel weird, it's like 2 a.m. and it's still 90 degrees and I'm sweating and I have to put a suit on and then go on Zoom all day. I'm just screaming at a camera that's stuck to a mirror right now. This is a game that we invest way too much into. Not just money. Obviously, people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this game, but like emotions and time and energy and like sit back and reflect. I mean, only like 6% of you guys are probably going to be watching at this point. So I'm talking to realistically like 45 people. But sit back and think of like your entire SWGOH career, unless you're a new player, like brand new, you've you've spent more on this game, by and large. I'm not talking cash. I'm talking time, effort, blah, blah, blah. Than you probably should have, right? You've spent more time on this game than you probably should have, and that's fine. I have as well, and I have enjoyed every second of it, and I don't regret it because this is, this game is book club. It's more of a social thing than it is a fun thing, right? Like we don't really enjoy the game. It's more just hanging out with our friends and stuff like that, talking Star Wars. But if you're gonna spend years, some people have spent 7 years on this game. Don't you want to put a little bit of foresight into what you're doing and make that decision a little bit more thought out? Like, yeah, you could save a couple months doing something that's a little bit easier, but do you want to then have to play catch up for the next 9 to 12 months because, you couldn't, push back your gratification? You couldn't wait an extra 2 months to get a JMK over a C or a Star Killer, not Star Killer, but a C or an SLKR or a you couldn't get the Executor or the Profundity instead of going for Lord Vader or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, really think about the time, emotional, and money if you're spending money. Like, fuck. This turned into like a speech on life. Just think a little bit before you decide to spend 9 months of your life doing something that you might regret in the future. And that's talking about the game. That's not talking about life. I'm sorry that kind of took a really weird analogy turn. Okay, I'm just gonna end the video because I need to go to work and call people and be a busy bee. I love you. Bye bye. Sorry, I'm on this really rinky-dink setup. I didn't bring any of my computers, so turning off the video is kind of hard. I found the button. Bye bye.